Mine, or both of ours, maybe.
Oh,
Wait,
both of ours. Yeah, of course.
one question, I'm thinking maybe it could have been the aliens abducted you and implanted the thoughts of the owls, because maybe deep down, you saw an owl before that. It was in your mind, and they just, took it and run with it to make you feel comfortable while they maybe loaded you on a spaceship and maybe were, experimenting with you. Have you ever gave that any thought?
I have wrestled with that very idea endlessly, and I have come to the conclusion that these felt like real owls. I've talked to other people who have had what they call the screen memory, and they describe like something, it's more dreamlike. It's something's out of whack. Something's a little out of kilter. The owls are too big. The owls are doing, so these owls were owl-sized, and they, I was in a place where I could see owls. So I feel like I'm not, I feel like I'm going to stand by that. Unless I get some other evidence, I'm going to stand by that, that these were real owls. Now here, I'll just add one more thing. In 2009, I started an online blog that has been going for the last, now that's 9 years. It's going to be a decade next year. And I have put a lot of effort into that blog. I've done a lot of podcasting and a lot of, mostly, I've done a lot of archiving of my own experiences on that blog. That was the very first post, the story I just told about Kristen. That was her name. Now, after I posted it, I got a hold of Kristen. She had since moved, and we would still talk occasionally. And I called her up and I said, "Listen, I have to ask, what were you talking about the very first night when we saw the very first owls?" And because I remember at the time, I was like, "Wow, I'm really impressed." And this is what she told me. She said, "I was trying to articulate my deepest beliefs about God." Now, for me, in this research, I feel like I go pretty far out there with my research. This would have been at the dawn of when I was really starting my research. That she was talking about God in the moment the owls showed up kind of added a depth and an intensity to that experience that I would never have known had I have not asked her. So that, what was already a very powerful experience got even more powerful when she told me that one detail.
Wow. I would have been getting a little bit nervous at that point, I mean, I live on a couple acres of cedar trees, and, occasionally I see a woodpecker or I see an owl. I've actually had one, land in front of me, on our decking and, on the rail, and just stare at me for a few minutes and take off. But that's the closest encounter I've ever had with an owl. But maybe.
So here, let me ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
What was your impression when it landed near you?
It felt like it was checking me out, because it just landed there for, no reason at all. And just, it's like maybe it was there for a couple minutes, and I think me and my son or a couple of my sons were out there on the porch, it was the summertime, relaxing, and, we were kind of surprised. I mean, of course, when you live with a couple acres of, trees in a forest area, you do see strange things, but, I never thought owls were friendly. I mean, I seen them, I hear them all the time out in my woods. I'll hear an, owl in the morning, afternoon, late at night. I hear them, doing their little thing. But that was the first time I've actually ever had one, land probably like 5 feet away from us.
Very interesting. So this is that's not impossible, right? That's the kind of thing that happens. And it's rare, but it certainly does happen. And what I've often found is that even people who see a normal owl, will describe a certain intensity to the sighting. Like the owl has a majesty and a power and an intensity that like a bunny rabbit does not have.
Oh yeah. I was curious when it landed. And I looked at that thing and I said, "Wow, that is big." It was probably maybe 14, 15 inches high. It was not, little one.
Oh, that's pretty big. Yeah, that's a biggie.
Yeah, a big one. And I was kind of, and it was chubby, and, and it had a big wingspan too. So, I mean, and all I just remember is the beady eyes, the big eyes just staring at us.
Well, they certainly have intense eyes, and yes, they have. So they're obviously night hunters. So they have big eyes for, obviously for hunting at night. And the do you remember what kind of owl it was? Did it have little ear tufts or anything?
I have no idea. I mean,
Okay.
it was,
Just wondering.
as far as I remember, it was gray and darker gray, shades on it. The body was lighter than the wings. That much I.
And you're up in.
Gig Harbor.
Gray.
Gig Harbor, Washington, up by the peninsula, kind of.
Yeah, that's rare. So you should feel honored to have had that coastal wildlife sighting with a wild owl.
Yeah, I rather had that than we have a couple little cats and dogs, and we've been plagued with eagles quite a bit here the last couple of years. There's a couple of eagles.
Oh, that's right. You're right near the water, the salt water. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to always worry about if your dog's out there doing its business, getting a free ride somewhere.
Yeah, a one-way ride. Yeah.
Yeah. They're scary, and those are big too. So you had this encounter. I mean, how did she take it? I mean, it's unusual to go out, one time and go out again, and then, the owls are there again.
Yeah, very, very interesting. The same event. Yeah, I agree. Very interesting. She was astonished. She was, sort of right there with me as far as, what my original thought was what's the totem meaning of this? What's the spirit animal meaning of the owl? Because it was profound. It was really intense. Now, I have been working at an outdoor school. I've been working nearly 20 years on and off for various outdoor programs and outdoor schools, teaching camping and mountaineering and backpacking and skiing and such. So I've spent a lot of time outdoors, and I spend a lot of time sleeping outdoors. And I've heard owls occasionally, but there was nothing like what I just saw at that point. Now, what happened afterwards is I started seeing owls all the time. I started seeing them in big clusters, three owls at a time, 5 owls at a time, 2 owls at a time. And at highly charged moments, that's the term I use in my research, highly charged moments, in the middle of a conversation, I'm on my way home to do something. Basically to write about my own experiences. I'm on my way home to write about my experiences. And I know that's what I'm going to do, and I'm on my way home to do it, and I see an owl. Now I take that little synchronistic foreshadowing, let's say, I take that seriously. What was happening before the event and what was happening after the event. And I have, at this point in my research, I'm treating owl sightings and UFOs sort of synonymously. Yes, I realize they're obviously different, but I treat them the same and I weight them the same.
What concerns me, okay, is you had the alien sighting, outside your window. And, how many years before was that, before you saw the owls?
Well, the owl was in 2006, and that was 1993, so that was 23 years later, yeah.
Well, they still could be tied into each other.
2006, yeah, 2006. Let me do the math again.
Okay.
2006, 1993, so 13 years later, so sorry.
Yeah, they still could be tied in. I mean, you might have been abducted. I mean, if something told you to put your head on your pillow and go to sleep, and you went to sleep, I'm sure.
I feel strongly that event is a contact event. Yes.
Have you ever? The reason why I'm going to say this, I had. You know who Roger Lear was? He was the surgeon.
Oh yeah, I've met him a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah, real nice guy. I had his number 9 patient on last week on my show. And, he was abducted. He doesn't really remember much what happened other than him and his wife were driving. They saw a UFO, and, time kind of stopped, or it seemed like it stopped for him. And the next thing he knew, he went to the doctors about something and they showed something up in the x-ray. I'm just wondering, maybe it could all be tied in from your first encounter with the aliens, and maybe the owls. There's something. I'm just trying to figure out. At this point, do we talk more? I just wonder if they're just tied in because it's so unusual to to run across owls like that, and if some of the people have been abducted. It's been with animals and different things. It seems to,
sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
connect.
Yeah, well, I've got 2 books out, and so the one book's 400 pages, and the other one's about 250 pages. So that's 650 pages of exactly the questions you are just wrestling with right there, trying to come to terms with those. At this point, I am absolutely convinced. This is me talking. I can't say it as a fact. I can say that I personally am convinced that owls and UFOs are connected. The why or how of it is a mystery, and I can kind of, dance around what may or may not be the source. But I can say that there's something about the owl that is connected with the UFO contact experience. And what has happened is, since that starting the blog, I have been putting a call out on my blog. I've been writing articles about owls and UFOs. I've been doing podcasts about owls and UFOs. I've been writing books about owls and UFOs. So if you sit at your computer and you type out owl, UFO, my name is the first thing that comes up. And then it's about the next 25 things down that scroll underneath that. Now,
I noticed. Believe me, I noticed. Now, before we go any farther, why don't you tell people the name of the books, where they can find them, and then why don't you do a shout out for your blog?
Okay. So the first book is called The Messengers, and the subtitle is Owls, Synchronicity, and the UFO Abductee. The second book is a companion to that first book, and it's called Stories from the Messengers, and the subtitle is Owls, UFOs, and a Deeper Reality. Now, these books can be read in either order. They read pretty cleanly if you pick one up. You don't need to read one before the other. My blog is hiddenexperience.blogspot.com, and if you can't remember that, you just type in owls, UFOs, and I'm the first thing that comes up. And so imagine you have a UFO sighting anywhere in the world, right? This is the modern era of internet communication.
Oh, yeah.
So within a few mouse clicks, if you've had an owl and UFO experience, I am just a few mouse clicks away, and I want to hear these stories. And I've been collecting these stories and trying to archive these stories and trying to, make sense of these stories.
Well, what are you hearing out there from people, about owls and their abduction or UFO sightings, and how's it tied together with other people?
Well, I'm certainly seeing consistencies in the stories. Oftentimes I'm getting, sometimes it feels like word for word, the stories. Here's a very simple story. A fellow named Derek, sleeping out in the desert. He's camping with a friend. He's next to the campfire. Him and his buddy are talking, looking up at the night sky. They look up at a cactus, and there's a great big owl on this cactus. They watch it for a little bit, and they both get the same vibe, like, ooh, this is ominous. Like, they're intimidating. It's unsettling, and the owl flies off. Moments later, a triangle-shaped craft flies over them, like a UFO. And Derek, I sat with him, he struggled to try to articulate how weird that thing was flying. It was not flying like an airplane or a helicopter. And in the follow-up, just a few days later, he saw another UFO. And in the follow-up in his life, he had odd experiences at night, feeling that he was being passed through the wall, things like that. And he also, part of his experience was that he said he had a spiritual awakening. Now, I take all of that very, very seriously. So, honestly, I cannot say whether he's been an abducted, he's had some sort of powerful experience. I can't say that he has been abducted. I've asked him, do you think you're an abductee? And he says, no. And I got to just let that lie. But he certainly tells the kind of stories and the kind of experiences that an abductee might say.
Well, yeah, it sounds like it. Some people just, they know they've been abducted, but they don't want to admit it. They don't want to admit it to other people either. I think there's still some people out there that are scared to, because they're going to get labeled really fast by some people.
I agree. And I'll also say that. Oh, go on.
Even though that the UFO thing has really opened up in the last 10, 15 years. I mean, there's so many sightings going on, so many things that's unaccountable. People that, like you were in your bedroom, you saw something, out there. Next thing, you're instructed to put your head on your pillow, you fall asleep. You don't know what happened to you at that point. You really don't. So, I mean, they wouldn't have told you to go to sleep. They